I don't know what I'm doing with that title, but what am I going to do? This is Brian for Liberty. I am doing a little. This is a little fun I've been having, and I don't know if I'm going to stick with it, but I kind of like this format where I just grab a video and do some commentary on it. Today, my my subject matter is PoliticsGirl, a podcast, and she's on YouTube with just shy of 100,000 subscribers. I think her podcast maybe is bigger than her YouTube channel is. She is from the she is what I would like to call is the binary camp. The one party good, other party bad, doesn't matter. And nothing is. It's 100% binary. If you're not with me, you're against me. Sith type thinking. And she's talking about this is actually a pretty interesting topic. She's actually talking about a potential impeachment of a Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin. Now, Brian for Liberty here, have ran for office twice in the great state of Wisconsin, and as a libertarian, and got to meet a lot of folks up there. And one thing about Wisconsin, I will tell you, is it's very purple. It's a purple state. And when I say it's a purple state, I don't mean that the population is mixed. I mean that the individual thinking up there is mixed. When Gary Johnson ran for president, Wisconsin was the number one state, I think, in terms of percentage of libertarian votes. So Wisconsin's a unique spot. And so when you have a liberal justice on the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, you're going to have all kinds of fireworks. So let's get into PoliticsGirl here a little bit first. Let's start there and go from kind of her bit and what she's got going on, and then we'll talk a little bit about my take of what I think she's got going as well.
So be prepared to be annoyed and then hopefully fired up.
This woman is passionate, by the way. She doesn't come out with a little she's not, she doesn't. There's no as the kids like to say. Kids probably don't say this anymore, but there's no half. When she comes out, man, it's both barrels, buddy. It's all of it.
Remember that election for the Supreme Court in Wisconsin last April? The one that Janet Protasewicz won by 11 points that changed.
This is a big deal in Wisconsin because this shifted the court's balance from, it's got a liberal majority now for the first time in a long time.
Up on that court, a court that had been 4-3 for the far right for years.
Okay, so everything that's not left for a liberal like this, a binary thinker, everything that's not to the left is far right. So just bear that in mind. Wisconsin is not, by any stretch of imagination, nothing about Wisconsin that you would think far right. Leans to the right, like I said, purple, kind of conservative. It's a farming state. It's the dairy state, right? So it is a conservative state. But to say that Wisconsin is far right is,
Court that had allowed the most gerrymandered maps in the country, so that 6 of the state's 8 congressional districts went to Republicans, despite.
Now, this is an interesting thing. So what she's going to say is that the state itself is evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. Right. This is an interesting point because what she's really talking about, and she's not going to mention it, she may not even know she's doing it, is she's talking, this is the liberal talking point, the left-leaning talking point of there shouldn't be an electoral college. At the state level, of course, we're at the state level, but that's what she's talking about. Yeah, the state's evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, but if you look at the state, all the Democrats live in Madison and Milwaukee, and maybe, there's a little bit in Green Bay and Eau Claire. That's where all the Democrats live. This is not a state with a huge population. I think the population of Wisconsin is something like 5-6 million. If you look at the populations of Madison, like that county, plus Milwaukee, and then you take a little bit of like the Eau Claire, Hudson area, which is up closer to Minneapolis and gets bleed over from the Twin Cities, that's where all your Democrats are. The rest of that state is farmland. It's country. So yeah, I don't know how you would change the map to change to flip those districts to blue. To be honest with you, there's districts that are just conservative. They're always going to be conservative. They're farm communities. So yeah, the population's evenly split, but the districts aren't, and that matters.
The state itself being evenly split, if not Democratic leaning. The court that allowed almost every and all form of voter suppression, so Republicans ended up with 65% of the state house, despite only having 50% of the vote. The court that was...
Once again, you see what I mean? You see what I'm saying? This is the, there should not be an electoral college. Everything should be governed by popular vote. They got 65% of the state house, even though they only got 50% of the vote. Yeah, they didn't win 50% of the districts. That's the issue. And the way Wisconsin's geography is, the way Wisconsin's population is dispersed, it doesn't matter how many people are Democrat. At the end of the day, you're going to have far more red districts. In a state like Wisconsin, you're going to have blue districts.
Ready to uphold the reinstated abortion law from 1849, the one that made abortion all but illegal and forced medical students to leave the state in order to complete their OBGYN training.
Now, this is this is important to keep in mind. This is an ideological position she's talking about right now. She is pro-choice. Fine. I'm not having the pro-choice, pro-life argument. She's pro-choice. She doesn't like the court, or didn't like that court because of her ideology, which is perfectly fine, but it's not a reason to be. Look, if that's what the people in that state wanted at the time, then she's going to go on to talk about democracy and protecting our democracy and people's voices. Well, if that's what the state wanted at the time, then you can't be upset about it. That's the way it was. This state has started turning blue as people have fled the Twin Cities because to escape progressive policies in the Twin Cities. And the disaster that Minneapolis has become, people are flooding into across the border up there into Wisconsin. And of course, they're still voting blue. And that's what's tipping the scales in Wisconsin towards the blue side. But the voices of the people in Wisconsin have been conservative for kind of a long time. So, do you remember that election? It was a big deal because the people who believed in democracy and fairness worked their hearts out to get people out to the polls, and the extremists lost. You see, the Democrats are the people who believe in fairness and justice and democracy, and everybody else is an extremist. Million people voted for the justice who believed in fair districts and the rule of law and reproductive freedom. And that really should be the end of the story, because the people came out and made their voices heard. But if we've learned anything over the past 6 years, it's that the Republicans no longer care what the people think. By the way, the Republicans don't care what the people think, but let's just bear in mind that it is the Democrat Party and the DNC that is not going to hold a primary. And when Bernie Sanders was a threat to Hillary Clinton in the primaries, they just came in with the superdelegates and said, screw what our primary voters are saying. Clinton's our candidate. This is what I mean. Like, when I listen to people like this, I end up sounding like a Republican, which I'm not. But you don't get to do that. You don't get to say that the Republicans don't care what the people, your party doesn't care what the people thinks either. The political parties are broken in this country. And so binary thinkers like this, who are so passionate about their beliefs, it just cracks me up. It's like, yeah, the Republicans, maybe the Republicans don't care what the people think, but neither do the Democrats. Can we stop pretending like they do? It's why the state was gerrymandered in the first place. If you can't beat your opponent, then you rig the game to make sure they can't win. And if they do win, then, like Donald Trump or Carrie Lake, you claim they didn't. But what if they win by so many votes that you can't get people to buy that the election was rigged? Well, the new plan is to have the winner removed. So if you're unable to beat or cheat, you impeach. This is coming from, all right, so I commented on this video of hers on YouTube. I'm just, I'm tiny, so she's not going to respond to me. I'm a very under the radar, like me and my couple hundred followers and the 50 views I get per video. But let me just say, I commented on this and I said, isn't the Democrat Party the ones that impeached, that for 4 years said Trump stole the election and then impeached him twice? And one of the times they impeached him, wasn't it because he threatened to withhold military aid to the Ukraine unless the Ukraine investigated Joe Biden? Although Joe Biden was on camera saying that he was going to withhold aid to the Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor who was going after the company that his son worked for. But Biden's not, do you know what I mean? This is that binary thinking. Only the Republicans cheat. Only the Republicans do. No, both parties do that. This is like a standard political maneuvering. Every election, I don't remember the last time. I think Clinton probably. Maybe Bill Clinton was the last. Obama. I think the election of Barack Obama in both times was probably the last time. And this is kind of interesting. The last time that we had essentially an unchallenged transfer of power, where nobody said nobody claimed that there was any funny business. When after obviously Trump, but you look at Bush, you look at who's challenged elections historically the most. I think it's been Democrats, really. I mean, they challenged the Trump results, and for 4 years, everybody, these Democrats are on, including Hillary Clinton, on record saying that he's an illegitimate president, that the election was stolen, Russian collusion, and all that stuff. We know that. Al Gore took his loss to George W. Bush all the way to the Supreme Court. So Democrats have a pretty long history of challenging election results and doing it in the court system and doing it legally. And I don't have a problem with that, but let's stop pretending that only the Republican, like Democrats are always so gracious in their losses and step aside and give hand power over when they lose. They're such great losers.
The Wisconsin Republicans are doing what our House Republicans are doing right now, trying to get rid of a popular chosen representative that they don't like. So before Justice Protasiewicz even has the opportunity to even hear a case, the Wisconsin Republicans are threatening to impeach, convict, and remove her from the bench. For what? Doesn't matter, because it's nothing.
Hold on. It matters. See, this is the problem. This is the problem right here. She's just going to gloss over the why, right? We're not going to talk about the why. We're just going to say, oh, Republicans are evil, and that's the reason. The reasons don't matter. Okay. So let me start by saying I don't necessarily agree with what the House Speaker in the state of Wisconsin is doing. Okay,
More than an obscene and unconstitutional power grab.
Let me do that. But let me get into the article itself so we can actually have a conversation about the whys, because the why actually does matter in this circumstance. So let's get into it. Wisconsin. So I tried to pull something that it would be relatively as neutral as you can get in our current political environment. So I pulled this from the AP, right, to get familiarize myself with the story a little bit. So let's get into it. First of all, let me compliment PoliticsGirl on her incredible ability to pronounce the Supreme Court justice's name, which I am not necessarily great with. Protasiewicz, whatever, won the election in April in a 10-year return to a 10-year term on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Beginning August 1st, her 11-point victory gave liberals a 4-3 majority, ending a 15-year run with conservatives in control. During her first week in office, 2 lawsuits were filed by Democrat-friendly groups and law firms seeking to overturn Republican-drawn legislative maps. Now, this is important because one of the points that she's making is that they're doing this before she even has a chance to hear a case, right? So if you think about that, as soon as she was elected, as soon as she won the race, these lawsuits came from the Democrat Party, right? Or Democrat-friendly groups, not the Democrat Party, Democrat-friendly groups. I want to be clear with my language here. So Democrat-friendly groups right away brought these cases. So right away, there's something going on. Now, Republican lawmakers who've talked about the possibility, most notably Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, alleged Protasiewicz has prejudged redistricting cases pending before the Supreme Court because of comments she made during her campaign. They also argue her acceptance of nearly $10 million from the Wisconsin Democratic Party disqualifies her. Now, that's fascinating because we all know that only the Republicans take money. Right. When I ran in Wisconsin, one of the big things was campaign finance reform and how much money was being poured into these different campaigns. But we're not going to. PoliticsGirl does not mention the $10 million that the Democrat Party gave to this candidate. She also doesn't mention the fact that what did Protasiewicz say? Protasiewicz frequently spoke about redistricting during the campaign. Calling the current Republican-friendly maps unfair and rigged. Let's be clear here, she said at a January forum, the maps are rigged here, bottom line. That's not a question. That's not vague. There's nothing vague in her statements there. They do not reflect people in the state. I don't think you could sell any reasonable person that the maps are fair. I can't tell you what I would do on a particular case, but I can tell you my values, and the maps are wrong. So what does the law say about recusal and impeachment? So this is where this all comes from, right? On recusal, the U.S. Constitution's due process clause says a judge must recuse if they have a financial interest in the case or if there's a strong possibility of bias. So no, the reason does matter. What the words that come out of her mouth do matter. The things she's saying on the campaign trail during the race matter in this case. So what Vos is saying is that she needs to recuse herself from this case for a very specific reason that is actually supported by the U.S. Constitution in terms of her ability to judge this case without bias. That is legitimate. And so the idea isn't that they are going to try and impeach her right now or throw her out of office. The idea is that there are cases, not because of how the Republicans think she's going to rule, but because of the things that she specifically said that intimate towards a very specific bias while she was running. And so she can't hear the gerrymandering case. And if she refuses to recuse herself, then the legislature is justified in taking a step to remove her because she is not following her sworn duty to support, defend, and uphold the Constitution of the United States, which says what I just said. If she has a preconceived bias or is not going to be able to fairly judge this case, she has to recuse herself. What she said, the money she took from the Democrats, that's a financial interest. What she said in the campaign trail leads towards a bias. So I love the binary thinker is going to come in here and say, no, the reasons aren't important. But as I think anybody who isn't a binary thinker, anybody who isn't just a strict party loyalist, would be able to say, yeah, sorry, the reasons in this case do actually matter.
From a party that doesn't know how to lose and can't win. Instead of accepting the will of a voter, which as voters we should all want, Republicans have filed 2 bogus lawsuits to stop the justice from ruling on cases that they don't want her to rule on.
No. She does not get into any of the reasoning behind it. She doesn't get into any of the constitutional language. She doesn't get into any of it.
Their blatant gerrymander of the state that gave them the power in the first place. In fact, they wouldn't have the votes to impeach her if the previous Supreme Court hadn't rigged the maps to give them the votes. And now they're saying, we're going to use our unfair power advantage to make sure you can't rule on our unfair power advantage. They're basically saying you can stay provided you recuse yourself from any cases we don't want you ruling on.
No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying that you can't rule on this case, which you specifically spoke about on the campaign trail, which paints a picture of pretty heavy bias one way or the other. It is irrelevant. Look, as a Wisconsinite, I have never, and as somebody who's actually ran up there a couple of times, I've never really studied the maps. I just know the kind of the layout of the state, okay? My take on this when I was running, when the gerrymandering question came in front of me, was always, well, who's going to draw a fair map? You're never going to get, if gerrymandering is the issue, you're never going to get a fair map. You want to get rid of gerrymandering, have more than 2 political parties. That ends the gerrymandering conversation right there. Stop voting for the 2 political parties. That doesn't mean you can't gerrymander, but it becomes far more difficult to gerrymander a map if you have to try and chop up the districts and figure out how to get. First of all, you're sharing power in the House. You're sharing power on the court. You have to figure out who's going to vote where and all this different stuff. So it's far more difficult to do if you have more than 2 political parties. So as the libertarian, I would just say, hey, if you hate gerrymandering, I got a great idea for you. Why don't you vote for me? But as is a standard operating procedure, I did not win.
But she's not going to do that because that's insane and basically makes the Supreme Court just an arm of the state legislature and not its own independent body. So they're going to use their majority to impeach and remove her instead. But isn't that illegal? Well, kinda, but not really, because no one's ever done it before. When the voters elect someone, we assume politicians can't just come in and overturn that election to stay in power.
I don't know if she's doing this in real time or if she's recording herself at time and a half, but doesn't that seem really fast? It's very well edited, but it seems really fast. That's not really super relevant to the conversation, but I'm just
That feels
curious.
like a pretty basic American value. And yet, here we are, witnessing yet another fundamental attack on our system of government by the Republican Party.
Only the Republican Party. Nobody else. The Democrats would never do such a thing.
Our country, state and federal, has been set up to have 3 co-equal branches, not a dictatorship of any one. This potential action threatens not only the voters of Wisconsin, who Republican representatives want to disenfranchise, but our entire democracy.
That is one of my favorite. I think everybody on the left, in particular, I don't listen to a lot of the right wing people, to be honest with you. I don't like the Ben Shapiro's of the world and Daily Wire and all that. I don't listen to a lot of that. I don't care for it. I think they are kind of out of they kind of lost their minds over there. Anyway, there's some stuff I agree with, but that doesn't matter. Why does every left-wing, left-leaning Democrat, whatever commentator, why is it always like it's a threat to our democracy? It's a threat to it's the very core of what our democracy is. These are the same people who want to get rid of the Electoral College, which is a fundamental core part of our democracy, written into the Constitution, commented on in the Federalist Papers. The Founding Fathers were very adamant about the Electoral College as a foundational part of our republic. And these are the people who want to get rid of it, but they are always very concerned about everything that's going to be a threat to our democracy. It cracks me up.
Because if a Republican legislature is simply allowed to overturn the will of the voter, especially for a Supreme Court justice, it's one of the only people that can hold them accountable, then how are we not setting ourselves up for all future court rulings to just be at the whim of whatever party has the legislative majority?
Okay, that's valid. That's a very valid statement. So she's making some valid points here, broad points, right? That's a valid, broad point. We should be very concerned about a legislature overturning election results for a Supreme Court justice. That's something we should genuinely be concerned about. But if you watch this thing from the beginning, she's glossing over the fact that, yeah, there are reasons that in this moment, at this time, that this is happening, right? So this is a little bit of the sky is falling, because first and foremost, they're saying that if this judge doesn't recuse herself from a case which she has previously expressed a pretty strong bias on, and has taken $10 million in donations from the Democrats, that she should probably have to recuse herself. If you look at the constitutional language, that's a valid point that they're making. So So yes, I'm very concerned if a legislative branch is just going to toss out a Republican. Well, I'm sorry, if the legislature is just going to toss out a Democrat, a liberal judge because they don't like the way that they're ruling. But on the flip side, you have to look at this thing holistically and go, is there a valid, justifiable reason that they're even having the conversation? Yes, of course there is. The other part of this that really gets me is when the Democrats decide that they're going to pack the court, and that's probably, I would say, if the Democrats win the presidency again, if they win in 24, and they get a majority in the House and the Senate, maintain their majority in the Senate, gain a majority in the House, that they're going to try and pack the court. I think that's definitely a move that they're going to make, and they're going to load the court up with obviously liberal justices, and they're going to give an overwhelming majority to liberals. And I'm telling you right now, there's not going to be a single Democrat who's going to think that that's a threat to our democracy. That's it. That's the beginning, the end. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Democrats, honestly, I hope they don't win, because I think they've gone off the reservation. But I personally believe that if they do win and they have a majority in both houses, that's exactly what they're going to try and do. And I guarantee you, PoliticsGirl here is not going to have a problem with that, and she is not going to think that that's a threat to our democracy in any way, shape, or form. There's talk about it, but I think that talk has gotten very quiet because I don't think they want that to be a topic going into the next race. But that's a whole nother can of worms. Maybe I'll do that in another video.
I should also remind you that back in 2020, Wisconsin came the closest of any state to overturning the presidential election. A single vote on their court was the difference between the Republicans keeping or overturning President Biden's victory. So we can't be playing games with this seat.
I'll be honest with you, there's probably a lot of people watching this right now who are like, the fact that Wisconsin's court almost gave the election back to Trump is probably not, I don't know, man. I don't think a lot of Americans who voted for Joe Biden. I'm fascinated about the 2024 race, and I'm going to get into that stuff a little bit more. But I don't think that there are a ton of voters out there who are like, I am really glad that we ended up with Joe Biden in the White House. I'm sorry, I don't believe that to be true. I just don't think she's making a great case for her cause here by pointing at the Joe Biden victory as the thing we have to protect this seat for.
It shouldn't matter if you're a liberal or a conservative, if you lean left or right, or if you agree with the policy positions of the Wisconsin Republicans.
By the way, this video started with her talking about nothing but policy positions and ideology.
The question is, do you think your vote should count? Because if election results can simply be overturned, if the people in power don't like the results, then we no longer have elections. And that serves no one but the most corrupt people in power. And if you're thinking, well, if the justice is removed, then can't we just have another election to fill her seat? Yeah, we can.
Okay, so this is a valid point she's making, right? So why have another election if you can't trust that the results of the election are going to be respected, right? That's what she's going to go on to say here, and that's a valid point. She's not wrong. Then she gets a little sporadic here, but that's not how any of this works. She kind of loses her stuff a little. I'll tell you, she's a firecracker.
Well, we get involved. The Democratic Party.
Here's how we do it. So essentially, the last couple minutes of this video end up being like a commercial for a PAC, essentially that's trying to stop this thing from happening. My problem with this whole thing again is you gloss over the reasons that this is happening and literally say the reasons don't matter. No, the reasons matter. So I don't know. I think it's a little disingenuous. It's pretty standard. I haven't looked at a ton, I'll be honest, of her content. But it is somewhat keeping with what I've seen. She's definitely, it's not a question. She's definitely a binary thinker. That's definitely where she lives, where her bread is buttered. She is, I'm on the right. Everything the Republicans do is evil. They're horrible people. That's 100% where she's at. So, I've got another video here. I just started watching it, and I saved it. I'm going to do a full on bit on this at some point. I'm just going to give you a little consider this a little preview. This is talking about property taxes, and this is one of the things that kills me about the economic left in this country, the political left in this country, is this talking about taxation and who's paying their fair share. What's funny to me on this is, funny is probably not the right word. What's really sad to me about this is that the conversation never gets into why. It never gets into maybe we just don't need to collect as much money. It's never about this video. Here, well, let's get into it real quick.
Being severely undertaxed.
We know that the system that people are using is not working.
But the last 2 years have been insane, so you can't attack the assessor.
Nobody aspires to be the most hated man in the county.
There's a secret racket happening in America. It's money hidden in wine cellars and pool houses, policies, algorithms, and assessors' offices.
Essentially, this conversation is rich people. This theme may blow everybody's minds because this might be something you haven't heard before, but the rich are not paying their fair share, and how property tax assessments are increasing for lower income houses while they're staying stagnant or falling for the wealthy, and therefore the wealthy aren't paying their fair share of taxes. What always kills me about this argument is I'm gonna go through this whole video, and I'm gonna do a breakdown of it my next video, and it'll probably be a full hour long. But the thing that kills me about this is nobody ever says we need to lower the taxes on these low income people. It's always we have to. I mean, they do, but the overarching theme is these people need to pay more. It's never that the government's collecting too much. That's never the problem. You'll never say nowhere. I have not watched this video. I have not watched this video in its entirety, and I'm telling you right now, I will take a bet. Nowhere in this video are they going to talk about wasteful spending or abuse of tax money. They are not going to address that at all throughout this entire video. This video is purely going to be about how the rich are getting over and the poor are paying the price. I guarantee it. There will be nothing else. And then the last thing I do want to hit on today is the 52 people. Oh, I got my search screen up for all the world to see. Thank God I didn't have my bank account information up there. You guys could steal all the money I don't have. But the 52 people, I'm going to go through this article, one of these articles anyway, real quick. This is 52 people arrested in Philly for these riots. This is a story that you're hearing more and more. And I did a TikTok on this earlier today, and I got called an incel, which is one of my favorite insults. It ranks right up there with Uncle Tom, which I get called a lot. But being called an incel is always fun for me because I've been married for 20 years. But I was told it was an incel comment. This is the video. So you guys, some of you may have actually seen this video. I don't know if I can get volume on this or not, because I just kind of accidentally pulled it up. Doesn't look like it's going to play video for me. Bottom line is 52 people in Philadelphia were arrested. Let's see if I got a video here or a story I want to read. I had it up. I apologize. Look at me go. It's not great. Okay, here we go. So here we go. Over 50 arrested in Philadelphia after groups of people loot stores. Stores in Philadelphia's Center City area and in other parts of the city were looted Tuesday after a crowd of young people broke into stores, police said. At one point, the crowd making its way through City Center was around 100 people. Interim Police Commissioner John Stanford said, by Wednesday there have been 52 arrests, almost all of whom were adults. 2 guns were recovered, and the arrests included 3 juveniles. Mayor Jim Kelly called the break-ins a sickening display of opportunistic criminal activity, and police said they would have an increased presence throughout the city Wednesday. Look, we've seen it. We've seen the let's defund the police. We've seen some cities literally legalizing petty theft up to a certain dollar amount. They're not going to bother prosecuting. They've essentially legalized this kind of behavior. And we know right now that if one of these business owners armed themselves and defended their property, they're going to be the ones who get arrested. Didn't that guy who got arrested at the gas station, right? I keep hiding the article anyway, the guy in the gas station, right? Gas station, a security guy gets arrested, I think is what happened. Security. Let me just punch this up real quick. Gas station security guy, guard. Let me see if I'm right. I could be wrong on this. Here we go. Security guard charged in gas station killing, right? I'm going to pull this article up. So where is this at? Well, thank you. That is not what I was doing here. There we go. Let me pull this up here real quick. No, it's just taking me to the Yahoo main page. I'm trying to click on the article, and it's taking me to the Yahoo main page instead. So let's go to Action 5 News instead and see if they've got the story here. Here we go. Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this is a relatively right-leaning place where you'd think that the right to defend your property would be defended, but you'd be wrong. A security guard is arrested after shooting at an alleged reckless driver. No, that's not even what I'm going for. All right, I'm going to cut this part of the video out. Hey, for anybody who's still here, thank you for sticking around. My camera is acting crazy, so I don't even know if this is going to be something I can put on YouTube, but I'm going to upload it anyway. Anywho, this if you're jumping in, you're interested in any of this, go see it on the YouTube channel, Brian for Liberty. I'll also put the audio up on Spotify at Brian for Liberty on the podcast. Thank you all for stopping by. You guys have a great day.